Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You are attending the IT Purchasing Town Hall, where we are announcing BuyIT. This will be information on what's new, what's changing, and an introduction to our new IT purchasing application, which is called BuyIT. We'll get started in a few minutes, and I'll introduce myself right now and also a little further along. My name is Robin Oladort. I'm here on behalf of Academic Technology. And joining me today is Andrew Roderick, also from Academic Technology, and John Samer from Information Technology Services, with a special demo from Jonathan Forrester, who's also in Academic Technology. Again, we'll go over the project team in an early slide in the presentation, and we'll just give it another minute while folks join us.
And with respect to that introduction, just to be clear, this is not the new season of Stranger Things starting.
So thank you all again for joining us. Again, this is the IT Purchasing Town Hall, where we will be announcing BuyIT. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this presentation started. All right, so thank you all for joining us and welcome. We're preparing the campus for the launch and rebranding of the former Technology Acquisition Request, or TAR process, which will now become BuyIT. This presentation intends to, 1, create awareness that this change is coming, 2, explain the reasons for the changes, and 3, show and demonstrate some of those changes. The launch of BuyIT will not occur until Monday, July 29th. This date will come up again, so just remember for now, Monday, July 29th is when BuyIT goes live, and we will continue to make final touches on preparing the new system until then. So here's our agenda for today's town hall. That'll walk us through these changes. At the end, we'll leave some time for questions and answers, but also because this is a webinar, please feel free to use that Q&A section and ask any questions that you have throughout the way. We'll be answering them in the chat and also answering some of the more, the wider questions at the end. And so we'll start off with some introductions. Again, I introduced myself already. I'm Robin Oladort. I'm part of the academic technology side of the project team. You can see that the project team is composed of members from both academic technology and information technology services. But what's maybe even most important of this effort is the stakeholder partners that we partnered with. So this includes Disability Programs and Resources Center, or DPRC, Information Security, which is a part of the Information Technology Services team, and procurement. So now, what is changing? I'm going to hand it over to John in ITF.
Hi, everyone. I cue the next slide. So real question is, why are we doing this initiative? And the first part of this is just a few years ago, we really had a lot of concerns about how the TAR process was working. It was not a great customer service experience, and it was difficult for some people to get IT purchasing done on campus. So we wanted to work together really closely to see if we could improve the user experience, optimize some of the things that we were doing, as well as improve in other areas. And so we did focus groups and we got a lot of feedback, and we just found some opportunities for improvement that you'll see today. So why do we do TAR? It's often a question that we get. The reason is it's CSU compliance. So there's two major compliances they're requiring: one for accessibility, which requires that certain software be accessible for all of our students and people who are employees, as well as a security compliance portion of that, which requires our the software and items that we buy to meet information security compliance. And we at San Francisco State added an IT review to make sure that it makes operational compliance make sense.
And I'll jump in here for this slide. The TAR process is just one of so many that we undertake here on campus. We took on this streamlining effort for the TAR process based on campus frustration related to purchasing of IT goods and services, and some of our own experiences in terms of managing the process on the back end. And between our own observations and feedback we receive from partners that work on this process, we'll talk about those partners more, and the insights that came from many of you as part of focus groups we conducted and other engagements. We received a lot of feedback on areas where we could streamline the project. Some of those areas include questions from the TAR forum that were overly technical, like encryption at rest. Everyone, do you know what that means? Many people did not. Anyone can submit a TAR. And so we had a wide range of users across campus submitting TARs, but there was no training and no clear path for support. Pre-approved items were meant to be a streamlining function in the former TAR process, but adopting and using pre-approved items was unclear and sometimes still required further mitigation from IT teams. Digging up past approvals from ServiceNow for renewals was annoying to people. And probably biggest of all, a single monolithic form had been used to process a wide range of IT goods and services. So no matter how simple or complex the request was, every user was asked the most complex set of questions for all of those. So these were some of the things that came up in the process. Next slide. And looking at the process itself, one of the key and obvious areas that was also part of the feedback was a misconception of users that when they were approved for TAR, they were done and ready to buy. And really what happens is TAR is one part of a two-step process. And for all of us, we really need to look at when a user needs something, they sort of have an expectation, I need this thing, and then I want to get it. And they don't really care about the steps in between. But it's important for them to know and have a concept of what those are. And the lack of awareness that this was a two-step process had also created problems for users. This diagram shows a really simplified version where upon approval of a TAR, if you're making a requisition, you move on to procurement to process that requisition. Procurement has its own set of review items and tasks that need to be completed in order for that purchase to go through. Additionally, users can purchase the IT goods and services on a credit card. In that particular case, users are looking at a review process after the purchase. Next slide. And so this shows a really complex view of the workflow. And for us working on this project, we really had to break down each step to really understand where were the opportunities to streamline and what were people seeing in the process. What you can see here, though, is really this helps expose all those different stakeholders. And so in the middle of the slide, you'll see that a TAR initiates with an IT review. And for academic users, that IT review goes to academic technology to review the basic request. For non-academic divisions, those requests go to ITS. So that review upon approval then passes to simultaneously an accessibility review conducted by DPRC and a security review conducted by the ITS security team. They review it for those compliance elements that John mentioned at the beginning. And upon approval, we then move over, as in our simplified diagram above. There are other pieces that hover around this, and this complexity helps to show some of those. In the case of the accessibility review, sometimes something known as a VPAT's required. So you need to go to your vendor and get this document. A VPAT is a voluntary product assessment template, something that describes the relative accessibility of a product that you may be purchasing, created by the vendor. A HECVAT or SOC 3 are security related documents that, again, your vendor may have, should have completed and may be asked for upon a security review. There's also an insurance requirement. This is a CSU requirement predominantly associated with cloud service purchases, and this is managed through risk management. And so again, we'll talk more about this, but one of the questions is how do you take a complex process like this that cuts across several units and make it be clear and seamless to end users? Next.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to do the same things. I'm going to introduce BuyIT, our new application. So a couple things that we really wanted to improve is we wanted to streamline the experience. So we decided to make a web application that kind of took all of this at once. Like Andrew said, the workflow was very complicated with a lot of different steps, and that also made it complicated for end users to understand. So we were looking for a single place for people to land. One of the things we really learned about the focus groups and things like that, the people we were talking about, is people didn't know that we had a pre-approved list, which a pre-approved list basically means you don't have to go through any of this stuff. You just go straight to getting the thing you need. And so we really wanted to advertise that and really make that easier. The next thing we worked on was improving workflows. So when we talk about a workflow, buying cloud software is a lot that needs data feeds from PeopleSoft and other things is very different than buying 4 workstations. And so we wanted to kind of make those workflows a little bit different so that it was easier for things that are simpler to purchase to be able to go through the process quickly, and things that require more complex planning, more complex items, were able to be put in a different workflow where we would be able to talk to, like, say, our project management team and other areas to really build out what was needed for the project. One thing we really heard a lot of is the renewal process. A lot of people don't understand that IT reviews need to be really done every 3 years, and that's just due to CSU policy. And so we really wanted to make it easier for people to understand when they were up for a renewal. So if they requested another piece of software, if they needed to, like, an upgraded version, it requires an IT review. So we wanted to put that front in status. We also, in the old workflow, people didn't know where in the process they were. So if they submitted something, it kind of went into the ether, and then they would have had to ask somebody where it was. This process will make it very transparent of what step in the process people are. And then things that are favorites are added, which include things like, hey, I buy these computers fairly frequently. I can be able to select those and use those again as well. So the old application, the old item looked like this in ServiceNow. It was a nice single form, and now we have a new modernized web application.
And so once again, a 2-step process. So part of what we've built here really can be considered a framework upon which this entire complex process can essentially be laid out and also iterated and modified over time to really incorporate additional streamlining as we move forward. And predominantly in this 2-step process is the IT teams that are processing the initial reviews and overseeing the overall approval of a TAR. And then it passes on really to procurement. And again, in some cases, accounts payable, but for the most part, most of the items go through procurement. And so we're really happy to say that we've been partnering with procurement to really build into the process when a user is going through the form process within BuyIT. It is foreshadowing the requirements and the fact that when this is done, you are now going to be moving into procurement. And so what that really means is creating visibility for the user. And we've sort of internally stated that our goal is, upon a BuyIT approval, is to hand off well-informed users to procurement ready to do the procurement part of their order. So they have visibility on what they need to do. A couple of examples of things we built into the system to help enforce that are when a user in the BuyIT form enters the vendor information in, we have entered into the system the vendors that have been approved with a vendor 204 form. And so those will auto-complete in the system. And if for some reason that that vendor is not recognized in the system, a box will pop up. And that box will say, your vendor was not immediately seen in the list of vendors already approved. Here's a link to the vendor 204 form. You might send this to your vendor and have them begin completing it before you move forward. And so again, that's a requirement that if not really caught here within the BuyIT process, would be something confronting the user when they were passed on to procurement after the approval process. And so that's one example that we've built in now. But as we launch this, what we're saying is the BuyIT process is like bringing home a puppy. When you bring home that puppy, it's going to be fun. You're going to play with it, but you're going to have to train it, and you're going to have to slowly make it work within the confines that it's in. And so we're really here to keep training this system, both adding streamlining on and also fixing little things that come up, because it's not going to be perfect as we launch it. And so one of the things we're telling everyone is part of our methodology here is really to, again, continue to partner with our units. Next slide. Continue to partner with our direct stakeholders in the process, but really overall emphasize to all of you that the end users of BuyIT are really the biggest stakeholders of all. And so we're really inviting everybody as we cut over this process next Monday to let us know if something's not working right. Let us know if you see an area of improvement. And one of the things we'll be doing after we launch is continuing to add in some of this automation. And so we've talked about these partners already, but I want to also just sort of highlight procurement, who I've talked about, accounts payable, and risk management. These groups will form a regularly meeting operational team that will be reviewing both the BuyIT system and process, but also just ongoing tickets. How can we just keep improving the engagement process? Because we've created more of an automated system here, but the human element doesn't go away, and the customer service that we provide around it is a core part of that. And when you have a complex process that cuts across multiple units, you just need to meet and keep engaging to keep that process fresh and alive. And so really, we're here to say that this is really the first step in the process. And over the next year, we're going to be working to continually improve it. Just another example to think about something that it won't be in the initial launch, but will be added in. The risk management insurance requirement. It's something that really caught users by surprise. There's a lot of labor in going back to your vendor and asking them to get the insurance form with SF State signed on it. So it's a big sticking point in the process. Risk management has been great about providing a waiver to users when appropriate, when an acquisition really doesn't have enough risk to justify the insurance. And so one of the things we're working with risk management on is building into the form questions that would reflect the exception process. And we're looking at the possibility of automating that so that when a user goes through the process, answers questions, if they're below a certain threshold, that insurance requirement would automatically be accepted. And so again, those are part of the things we're continuing to look at, and we want to hear back from all of you. Next. And so next Monday, we will be launching the new system. And what does that exactly mean? Well, the first thing it means is if you have to buy something this week, don't wait, fill out a TAR as it is. Those will continue to be processed up until Monday. But on Monday, what will happen is the TAR form that's in service now and the TAR website that's within the ITS website will go away, and some parts of those will redirect to buyit.sfsu.edu, where the new application will live. You can go there right now and you will see project information around the work that we're all doing and talking to you about here today. But on Monday, you're going to go there and you're going to see the application that we're about to demonstrate for you in a second. And so that new interface is going to come up. We are looking at approvals. John mentioned that the sort of management of approvals is a big thing for people. And so starting on Monday, the system will have an area where every TAR that you submit in this system will be stored in a My Approvals area. That's where they will be moving forward. We are looking at past approvals and looking at a way that we can migrate those into the system so past approvals will be there. And again, just as part of this ongoing engagement during our earlier town halls that we've conducted over the past 2 weeks, some of the feedback that came in was, gee, how do I delegate approvals? Because in my unit, somebody may get a TAR, but another person is the one purchasing it and providing that to procurement or providing that to accounts payable. How can we move these around the system? So after we launch, one of the things we'll be looking to how exactly we're going to add into the system is this ability to delegate and share. If somebody leaves the university, how can those approvals be migrated back to somebody else in the unit? So, so that's all part of the process. I'm gonna stop now and pass it on to let you actually see what this system looks like.
All right,
Great,
thanks,
thanks,
Andrew.
Andrew. Yep, you got it, Jonathan.
All right, let me get my share going. Okay, so somebody holler if you can't see. All right, the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to, this is the new BuyIT website. There's a couple highlights I'll bring to your attention. First of all, in the upper left-hand corner of the screen is your main menu items that we'll be interacting with most of the demo. But I also wanted to sort of call out that there are other features available on the BuyIT website, including a sort of one-click method to request a consultation that would cover any of those folks that might not be quite sure what it is that they want to buy or looking for some guidance on this. So some pre-acquisition questions. So we have a way to directly request that as all part of the application, as well as project requests. That would be for a more significant purchase, something that would require a lot of additional resources. It's not a routine purchase. Having said that, we'll go ahead and start using the system. So I'm going to start by going to look for a product. Let's say I want to buy Adobe Captivate and see if that shows up in the system. Whoops. Yep. And I can see that that's already in the list. So I'm going to go ahead and click the View button. Oh, and I see that fortunately this product is already approved for purchase. So that's going to streamline my process here quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and click Make a Request. And that takes me to a approval document. This is a document that you can print out and attach to your P-card report or submit along with your requisition in order to serve as proof that the item has been reviewed and is already ready to go into the procurement process. So as you can see, I ended up with a standard uniform kind of document that I can attach with any of the paperwork that I need to submit. Took me just a couple seconds, and that is all I would need from the TAR review process to make this purchase. But there are other items that I might want to buy, and that, let's say I'm going to buy a product that I'm not able to find. I'm going to buy some AWS credits. Okay, and so that doesn't turn up in the search, so that's not one that I can go ahead and just click to buy, but I can go ahead and click the Start a New Request process, and this happens to be cloud software, so I'm going to click the cloud software option, and I get into the BuyIT form, where we're collecting all of the information that we need from you at this point. So I'll go ahead and fill this out. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll call that AWS credits, Amazon. Amazon is the vendor in this case. Let's say I'm the primary user. We'll go ahead and put that in. We're not going to require any level 1 or level 2 data for this, but we're definitely going to have folks that log into this. Nothing else special about this, but I'll go ahead and leave a useful description. And then note down here how many people will be using this. And we'll say less than 25 staff, and we'll just kind of leave that as is. These are important parts of the review process because it helps the stakeholders assess the impact of this purchase, like for an accessibility issue, if we're buying a web application, that sort of thing. So in this case, we'll keep that simple. And then down at the bottom part of the form, we're sort of giving you a preview of some documents that you may be required to submit as part of the review process down the line. You don't need to include these documents in order to submit your TAR request. But if you happen to already have this material, you can go ahead and just attach that like you would any other attachment. Click Browse and locate the item and just upload it directly to your request. Again, this is not required yet. As part of a future part of the interaction, it might be required. But for now, this is just sort of to let you know that that might be coming in order to give you a chance to get started organizing those kinds of documents for that. So I'm going to go ahead and submit request. And then I get the status page for this purchase. And you can see all of the details relevant to the current status of this request right here in the application. So you can see the review path on the right-hand side. You'll notice that there's a local IT review for this purchase, accessibility and security review. And you can see the status of those. I just submitted this a few seconds ago, but over time, these will be populated with information from the, you can see that, okay, the local IT provider review has been completed, accessibility reviews completed, and security may be pending or something like that. So you can keep tabs on all of that directly here in the application. Now, if I wanted to look at other products, I can use the search. I can use the search to tag certain items as being my favorites, essentially. And so my products allows me to see any of the products. And maybe I make routine purchases of this, and so want to easily get back to some of the information about that product, or might just want to keep tabs on those for a future approval for that item, that sort of thing. But I can also go to the My Requests section, and this will show me all of my submitted TARs, including the ones that are approved. So I can go through this if I needed to go back and regenerate the document, or I wanted to see when that was approved to sort of keep track of when I would need to renew that TAR, and sort of a one-stop shop to get any of your TARs. So you don't need to go hunting around for any of your prior TAR approvals. You can just go to My Requests and see those items. So another thing that I wanted to mention is back at the front page, one of the things that we are doing is we are more clearly exposing these standard items. And you can see some of the more recently approved standard items down. These are just examples, but this will be fully populated when the system launches, of items that are the pre-approved campus standard items that are sort of one click to purchase. So that will be down here in the lower right-hand section of the screen. So if you needed to come buy an item and you just needed to buy one of the standard items, I can go ahead and make a request for a printer as an example. And again, it's the same situation. I can see that this is approved. I can click make my request. And I happen to have already submitted a request for this. So I can see the existing request and see and return to that approval page in order to print that out if I needed another copy of it for whatever reason. So that is the those are the key features for end users for the BuyIT process. And
Jonathan,
yeah,
if I could
yeah,
just
Andrew.
jump in and
Sure.
highlight a couple things,
Yeah.
just in terms of the standards. This is an area that we really intend to build up. It was part of the previous system. We have standards around workstations. We have standards around projectors or LCDs. Many of you who've purchased those have seen that. That also plays into the pre-approved items. We're planning on expanding that and then also increasingly picking best of breed applications in different cloud software areas that different people around campus like to buy, but they all sort of want their own flavor. And increasingly as a campus, we need to be coming together on a lot of these things. One, to streamline the purchasing process to begin with. And as part of the standards, we'd be looking to pre-negotiate terms and conditions, pre-negotiate pricing, so users can just really step into that as a pre-approved item. The other thing I want to bring up is in the latest updates you're seeing at the bottom of the page next to the standards, the recently approved. Just want to highlight again, in addition to pre-approved, we will now be providing already approved items. So for example, if a user purchases Calendly, 10 license of Calendly for their department, if another user comes in, they can see that, they can opt into that approval. We're doing a risk process here. If we've already approved the risk for somebody else's purchase, there's no reason we have to review it again. And so you can opt into it as long as it's a similar scope or similar type of request. So if it's another Calendly purchase that's 8 licenses or 12, that related to that previous purchase of 10, it's roughly within the range of the scope, and you can use that as a pre-approval. If you're going to buy 100 licenses, that's a different scope, so we'll need to reopen it because other factors come into play upon review. So just a few things we want to show at play. And the last thing I'll highlight here is start a project request. We'll link you out for major purchases. So if you're going to be buying a system that's going to impact an entire college or all students on campus, or is going to have an exceptional cost, or may also have a big impact on IT resources, that is the place that you go to request that. And a lot of our users won't realize that, and you'll just submit a TAR. And so in some cases, we'll be actually routing a TAR request over into that project request process that will usually end up being starting with a consultation with one of the teams to kind of go over exactly what's going on. But again, it's just to kind of highlight that certain kinds of requests for campus sort of fall out of our standard TAR process and become start to look more like a project level request. So I want to highlight that for you all.
Fantastic. And with that, we will head back to our slides just for one last piece of information here. So there's so much more to come on this. To note, our vision includes continual improvement of the process and the system. As Andrew and John both mentioned before, we are looking to expand our partnerships with our stakeholders, including procurement, to better tie BuyIT to other processes. And we're looking to have more consultation opportunities for finding the right good or service. Some future improvements, these have also already been noted, but just to recap them here, we're looking to increase pre-approved items, increase campus standards, automate that insurance requirement. As we discussed before, this is particularly relevant to cloud service requests. And of course, as mentioned, that project intake process request, as Andrew just mentioned. And so now we're here to take any questions that you might have. Feel free to drop them in the chat, or we can call on you and you can unmute and ask your question. So I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I think there's some, I want to highlight Chris Clark's question related to payments credit card payments for P-card monthly SaaS subscriptions. This is something that came up earlier, and what this question relates to is that when you want to buy software using a credit card, there are procurement approval is really required, and that is a process that is not part of BuyIT. It's outside of BuyIT. It's really a procurement and an accounts payable process, and so that approval is still required. It's something we'll be looking into with our partners in terms of how that fits into this particular system. And we know it's an important part. This question has come up in all of our town halls. And again, because we buy so much software that's increasingly being charged to us on a monthly kind of subscription basis and only accepting credit card purchases, this has been a big sticking point for the last few years. And so again, right now, what you do is you continue to have to go to procurement to get approval to use the credit card for this particular type of purchase. Once that's used, you make the purchase, and that's noted by accounts payable. But again, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that fits into the work we're doing here. Okay, Erica has asked a question. Once we receive approval, or if an item is pre-approved, are we still allowed to purchase it through any vendor? John or Jonathan, do you want to take that on?
So in most cases, yeah, you'll be able to buy from whichever vendor. You'll be able to select your vendor. There may be some cases where an item, if it's computer hardware or something like that, where there may be a vendor you need to go through. But in most cases, any of the approved campus vendors will work.
Do we have any other questions?
We have a hand raised, so feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nadia. I am the program associate with the Guardian Scholars Program on campus. And we support current and former foster youth who are at state. And so I have a few questions. Well, a couple of them related to like purchasing multiple like laptops for students. And so just wondering like how this process will like simplify the ability to purchase laptops for students for their personal use that they can keep. And then yes, the other question is purchasing a bunch of loaner laptops that would live in our office.
So I think I can answer that. So the purchase process for the TAR process would be like purchasing a computer. So when you would purchase a computer, if it was multiples, for example, you would be really a request that would really come to one of the teams. I don't know if you're supported by ITS or you're supported by AT, but it would come to our group, and then we would have a real conversation about how we would be supporting what you're doing and things like that. But the purchasing of computers is a pretty standard thing that we do. So it would probably be more simplified under this process than it would be under the previous TAR process.
Okay. And then the other question is, do we have the ability to purchase a printer with like approved grant funding without it having tagged? Yeah.
So the part of the BuyIT process, we would look at the printer, and then it would go under the security and accessibility review. And then when you would get to procurement, that would be a better question for them.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Any additional questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A feel free to raise your hand. Dave? Come on up, David. Feel free to unmute. All right, David, you're on the floor. Unmute and ask your
Okay.
question. There you
Right.
are.
Yeah. Okay. Would you mind go back to the slide? Hold on. That was simplified view of TAR and purchase process. Okay, so from here, once the TAR is approved, you have two arrows. One's going to procurement, and then one going to credit card. Who determines that?
So that's going to be based on the type of purchase you're making. And so we just talked about if it's a software purchase, you're going to need procurement's approval to make that purchase on a credit card ahead of time. And otherwise, it really is whatever accounts payable trains credit card holders to purchase as an approved purchase. That red arrow encompasses all of that. So when we say simplified view, this is a very simplified view of that process.
Okay. Because actually it goes to procurement. From procurement, it comes to accounts payable.
Okay, so we can update it that way?
Yeah, that will be better.
Sure.
Thank you.
And while David's here on the floor, I'd also like to say that long time over the TAR process, accounts payable has been incredibly dutiful about ensuring that the TAR approval is present for credit card purchases. And that's allowed us to catch a lot of purchases that wouldn't exactly flow very well onto our campus environment. Whatever those may be, sometimes non-standard computers, sometimes other kinds of elements. And so I just really, accounts payable has been an incredible partner throughout the previous parts of the process. And we look forward to continuing to partner with them. So thank you, David.
Sure.
Any additional questions?
I think Chris Clark had his hand up. I don't know, Chris, if you wanted to say anything or throw anything into the Q&A. Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.
So as we kind of wind down this presentation, we really wanted to create awareness around the change that's going to be taking place next week. We want to also emphasize that we're going to be present and watching very closely as we move into this new process. There are bound to be some hiccups or little things that happen, both in terms of we're changing. Anytime there's a change, everybody has to get used to it. So we're going to be here to make sure we're there to support it. Sometimes little things are going to break. And then, kind of as David pointed out, we're continuing to work with all of our partners and stakeholders. There's a real long tail on this process. So as we've been going through it, there's been different elements coming out and saying, well, no, this should be called that, not that. So there's nomenclature issues and all kinds of other things that we're aligning upon as we go through. And so this is the start. This is the beginning. It's not the end. So when we launch, we're really going to launch to continually improve this thing and to continually align it with all of the different other partners that are here on campus, because this is not really an IT system. This is really a system of a user wants something and a user needs to get something, and what's the quickest and clearest way they can do that. That's what this system really is. And there's a bunch of different folks that are part of that in addition to the IT folks. And so that's really what we're doing here. And it's a little bit of juggling sometimes, but we're going to be here for it. So as we prepare everybody for the launch, we're telling everybody, let us know if something's not working. Complain. It's okay. We're here to hear it. And the system won't get better unless you say there's something wrong with it. And if there isn't anything wrong, you're just kind of like getting used to something new, we'll explain that to you and walk you through it with you. So if you have any other questions as you reflect on this presentation, Robin will leave the contact information in the chat. And we really appreciate so many of you signing up and so many of you actually attending to be here with us today and hear about this important change for your purchasing of IT goods and services. So thank you very much.